Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Well, Brent, thanks for joining me on the Rad Dads show today. I'm going to start the way we always do, and that's by asking, who are you?
Who am I? My name is Brent Jordan Cooper. Was born in Winnipeg, like all good Canadians. I've lived in Calgary all my life. Um, I am the guitar player for the Ramblin Ambassadors, and before that, Huevos Rancheros, who I like to describe as the Juno Award losers. Right? We're nominated,
Nominated, though.
everyone, and we went into that knowing we wouldn't win. Right? We were the only like Western Canadian independent band. But boy, it was a great party.
Yeah, what a recognition, though, for what you guys did. I mean, so was that for Get Out of Dodge?
Was, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Who ended up winning that year?
Um, oh, it was Brand Van 3000.
I'm going to say I think you should have got it over Brand Van 3000.
Well, God, who else was in there? Treble Charger,
Okay.
um, Copyright, the guys from Slow.
Okay. Yep.
So they had a band, and yeah, we were the only independent band. It was nice and it was fun.
Yeah. And I mean that's just like exciting just to experience that whole process, I'm sure, being involved with the Junos.
Yeah, it was the first time they had it in Vancouver. Um, And my best memory is, well, actually, I was terrified when they read our name out that, what if we win? I'm not gonna be able to walk up there, um, knowing we wouldn't win. And Shania Twain was very short. She was the host, I think.
Okay.
But then the best thing was the Oyster Bar and the Crantini Mountain.
Nice. The
Yeah,
Crantini Mountain. So this is like a
it
stack
was
of
unbelievable.
Crantinis.
Yeah, and you just take one, they'd put it back, and yeah, it was excellent.
Yeah,
It
nice.
was
That's
a lot of
how the other half live, hey?
fun. I think so.
So what year was that you were nominated?
That I think was '98.
Okay.
Well, a
And
life ago.
and uh and Huevos Rancheros kind of wound down not long after that, right?
Yeah, sort of around the turn of the century, we
Okay.
released, the last album, and then, I mean, depending on who you ask, we just kind of petered out. I think, we were 3 really different guys, and sometimes we didn't always enjoy each other's company. You
Yeah.
know? And it was just hard. I think we were all going through different stuff at the time, um, but, I see Richie and Graham all the time. Tom is a little bit estranged, um but they're all family,
Yep.
Richie and Graham are definitely the little brothers I never wanted but got.
Well, that it's funny, like being in a band is a family. And so just like any other normal family, it could be really supportive, but it can also be really dysfunctional at times, right?
Yeah, yeah, well, we all really love each other, and what we went through was pretty amazing,
Yeah.
things that we got to do, but also really hard.
Yeah. Well, it's tough work being in a band and really making a go of it too.
Yeah,
Um, Yeah, it's kind of neat to talk about Huevos Rancheros. I've said this to you before. I don't know if you remember, but I have kind of a formative memory for myself. Like when I was a kid, what I used to do is so around that time, I guess, Get Out of Dodge, 98. Um, I would have been in grade 8, and I remember one of the things I used to love doing was sitting and watching Much Music,
yeah,
and I had our VHS machine, and I would like make mix tapes of music videos. And I remember, like, so I probably had like 10 or 12 of these tapes kicking around. But I remember because I was a guitar player too, and kind of just starting and stuff like that. I remember What a Way to Run a Railroad being like, I would
yeah,
watch it over and over and over and try and get that little riff, right? That
yep.
dun, 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 dun. And yeah, it just kind of it's a formative memory for me. So it's neat that for me that you're still playing music, still playing that sort of style of music.
Yeah.
So when I get to come, I never got to see Huevos Rancheros as a kid, but I have gotten to see Ramblin Ambassadors a number of times, and yeah, it's always just so nice for me.
Well, it's kinda funny, back then, Much Music was really good to us. Like, they were really good. They really helped us out. Um, every time we were in Toronto, they invited us on. They played every video we made a million times. It was and it was neat. That's when Much Music was about music,
Right.
and there was no internet or YouTube, so it really helped us out. Very grateful for that.
Yeah. And okay, and so, playing in Ramblin Ambassadors now, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I mean this is a Rad Dad show. You're also a dad.
I'm also a dad.
So
Yeah.
how many kids do you have?
I have 2 lovely daughters. They're both
Right.
adults. One's an engineer, and one just sort of wound down her ballerina career and is going to go to UVic.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're amazing kids and very successful, which I'm proud of.
When in your kind of musical career did your kids come along?
Well, um, like the early Huevos days, there's a big gap between them. And then the youngest was born just at the turn of the century.
Okay.
So, and it's funny, the older one, she came to see the ambassadors at the opening of it's now called Modern Love in Calgary.
Yep. Yep.
She was 17 and selling T-shirts for us. So I
Oh, cool.
think that might have been her first bar experience.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Nice.
but I'm not sure either of them are big fans. They don't really come to the shows, and I don't think they think I'm a rad dad. They probably think I'm just a goofy guy with too many
Well,
guitars.
do you consider yourself a Rad Dad?
Nah, I don't know. I try and think of who would be a rad dad. Like, is Ryan Gosling's probably a pretty rad dad.
Maybe. I don't we haven't had him on the show. That would be kind of cool.
You should. Um, it's a tricky question. Because you want to say, yeah, I'm a rad dad. I'm fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But I probably made the same parenting mistakes every dad has, and you know,
Well, it's funny. The question is kind of intended to spur that reflection a little bit, right? And we kind of either get like it's kind of one of two answers, right? And one is just like you said, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm a rad dad. Like, of course I am. And the other one is usually people being modest and like, well, I don't know. And I think, one of the things we're trying to kind of like explore on this show is I guess what is a rad dad? Like what are and you mentioned mistakes. Like I make mistakes all the time, right? And you feel like shit when you make those mistakes, um but there's something to be said for I guess reflecting on the things that you do, reflecting on the things that other people do, and really thinking about your parenting, I guess, being mindful of it. And so maybe let me ask it to you this way, like what is a rad dad? Whether you define yourself that way or not, but like what are some things that are important to you about um, a dad's role in their child's life?
well, I was kind of stirring that up while you were talking. I think is a the difference. What would be the difference between a rad dad and a good dad? Um, I think you really want to be supportive of your kids. You really want, but you need to maintain your own personality. Like, I think we see a lot of parents who drop their lives in favor of their kids' lives, or um, where am I going with that? Maybe
Yeah.
it's a balance. I've done rad dad things. Like my oldest daughter's very first concert experience was Jimmy Eat World. She was in grade 6,
Oh, that's awesome.
and we were on the guest list.
No
So,
way.
kind of like, yeah, it was kind of neat.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, that's that connection to sort of, we talked to a lot of musicians and artists and stuff, and that's kind of, it's a dual meaning, right? Like rad dad, is it just a good dad? But also you have this kind of like what I would call, for lack of a better term, like alternative uh, lifestyle, or like a unique experience of being a parent, right? Like living through being a musician, and all the things that come along with that. So tell me about that first concert. So you're on the guest list, you bring your daughter, you're watching side stage or something, or
You know, we didn't actually meet Jimmy Eat World. The opening band, um, help me out. Um, they're vegan. Sometimes they're angry.
okay,
Uh,
not Propagandy, Anti-Flag, who
I'm not-
else?
I know who they are, and I'm having a total brain fart. The guitar player is Blair, Donnie. They're two Blair brothers.
Rise Against.
Yeah, Rise Against. Yeah,
Yeah,
um, we went backstage and met them. The two Blair brothers were big Huevos Rancheros fans,
yeah.
and and I actually was on the guest list because a friend of mine is a promoter, but I can't remember. You know, I don't think we had cell phones, but reached out to it wasn't Donnie. Now I'm being a bad friend to these guys when I can't remember. But anyway, we went backstage and talked to them. It was really cool.
Yeah,
And Lauren, my big daughter, had a nice time. It was really good.
that's awesome. So I'm going to digress a little bit here, but Zach Blair,
Yes.
he has a guitar podcast. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard it. I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's called like Anti-Hero or something like that.
Oh, I should look him up.
Yeah, he needs to get you on that podcast, I think.
That'd be funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Um,
Blairs are super nice guys. They're
yeah.
really good guys, yeah.
And so before that time, they were Hagfish, right?
Yeah, so we met 'em when they were in Hagfish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great band. Love that band.
Yeah.
I got to see them a few years ago. They did the Blasting Room 25th anniversary show
Right.
in Colorado in 2019. I was fortunate to be there. And Rise Against actually played that too, which was kind of neat
Nice.
because it was a really small venue.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, you were kind of talking about some rad things, but also, what does it mean to be a good dad and things like that. So maybe I can let you continue on that thread
Yeah.
of like, I don't know, what's a rad dad to you?
Well, I'm trying to think, our good friend KJ,
Yep,
I know for sure he said he wasn't a rat dad, but he is, "Oh, hey, last weekend, the family and I were in Vancouver hanging out."
yeah,
Or, "Oh, we were in Japan, and before that, we were in Palm Springs." Like, they get a lot of travel opportunities.
yep,
When he can bring the family along to gigs,
yep,
that's pretty great. Uh, but my rad dadness, I think I've tried to be pretty supportive of my daughters. My youngest lived in Italy for 3 years, being a ballerina,
wow,
and I kinda was almost sad she came home because I didn't get to go visit this spring as I had the previous 2. But, just being very supportive of that,
yep,
I think, and also allowing the kids to take those opportunities. I think when I was her age, I was going to university and I was mostly interested in just drinking beer and playing guitar.
yep,
Um, and those kind of opportunities probably existed, but I would have been maybe too afraid to take them. But she just up and left.
yeah, good for her.
Yeah, yeah, with full support from her mother and me, and yeah, is
Yeah.
that bad? I don't know.
Well, I think you're answering the question that I asked, and that's like, what does it mean to be a rad dad? And you mentioned KJ. It's funny, like, and you're right. He did say, no, I don't think I am a rad dad, but he's just being modest. But it's funny when you talk to certain people, you like, and KJ is one of them. He just like gushes about his kids, right? You can tell how much
Yeah,
he loves those kids and thinks about them and puts them first. And to me, that's rad.
yeah,
Whether they get to come backstage to your shows or they even care about your band or whatever. um I think some of it is just really caring about them and really putting
yeah,
them first. And that sounds really simple, but it's actually not that easy because life is busy and complicated and people are complicated, right?
yep, yeah, yeah. See, you answered the question perfectly.
Well, yeah, I've talked to lots of people on this show, so it's nice. I've been able to put some of these things together. And in some ways it's, almost, we always say we're not a, like an advice show. We're not like a parenting advice show.
Yeah.
But I certainly take a lot of advice from it.
Yeah. Well, I just think what maybe the backstage dad is that's a cool dad.
Yep. Yeah.
Maybe and maybe rad dad is just being the caring and responsible and finding that balance between your kids' lives and your life.
Yeah. Well, you did mention like maintaining that sense of yourself, and I do think that's an important piece. So how, like, do you have any thoughts? Like, how did you kind of manage to do that as your kids were growing up and you're
Yeah,
facing the pressures of parenting?
there were probably a few times when I was in danger of losing the inherent Brentness, because you kinda get bogged down, I was going to school, I was working along McQuaid, I was raising the kids, trying to try and be a good dad, and you sorta sometimes forget to prioritize certain things. Again, the balance,
Yep.
you and having adult kids is kinda nice because maybe they don't they're not so dependent on you,
Right.
and you're I when I watch again KJ, we'll talk about KJ probably a lot because he's just a few blocks away. I was over at his house last night.
Okay.
He made cookies for my dad, you know,
What a guy. His whole family. Great.
yeah. But I just remember spending so much time driving to dance and driving to this and making room for that and preparing that. And now I can kind of chill and maybe gloat because my kids are awesome.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm lazy.
Well, and you talked about the Brentness. The Brentness
Yeah,
comes to the forefront as your kids get older, right?
yeah, yeah.
You don't have to work as hard to have the Brentness there.
No, yeah, they can appreciate me from afar, you know? Yeah.
So you mentioned your kids were never, you're not sure if they were really a fan of your music, but what did they think about dad, you know, performing, and your guitar playing, your guitar collection and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think they just sort of accepted it, like, I don't think they're I don't wanna say they're not big fans of the music that I play, but it's not the genre that they would
Yeah.
pursue when they are listening to music. My younger daughter's British invasion specialist, but now she discovered, Italian punk rock bands,
Okay.
and she went on a big Misfits binge, which is kind of funny for and she loves the Ramones,
Yeah.
which I'd like to say she discovered on her own, but I probably both daughters have an appreciation for the Ramones. It's my fault.
Yeah.
And big daughter, I think, really loves, contemporary and classic rock music, you
Cool.
know? It so seeing I don't know, appreciating my music, I'm sure they do, but they're not gonna really go out of their way to dig up instrumental rock from any period.
Right. Did your kids play music growing up at all?
Yeah, they did. The older one, Lauren, played a little bit of guitar in elementary school,
Okay.
and she actually, under my tutelage, she and her friends played pipeline for the school in grade 6.
Okay.
And then my younger daughter was a gold medal classical guitar player. She was better than me. She could read
Wow.
music, nobody's business, but I kinda whisper in case she hears me, she hated it. And then, when we sort of said, "Okay," she just put it down and didn't pick it up. She just, "I'm done," you
So
know?
is like, as a guitar player as you are, like, was that was that tough to accept
Well,
that?
yeah, and I tease her about it, and, she lives in Victoria now, and I said the other day, "Well, we're gonna get you a guitar." She goes, "Well, I don't know if I have time." But, maybe in time she'll come back to it.
Yep.
Um, big daughter has her Dan Electro in the corner, but I don't think she
Yep.
plays much. So, sorry, bug.
Nope, that's okay. Yeah, it's that time of year, right? They're finding their way inside.
Yeah.
Um, well, that's cool, and it's kind of, I always find that really interesting. So my daughter right now, my 8-year-old,
Mhm.
has just, in the last year, started playing. She's doing drums and guitar,
Wow.
and I didn't want to teach her. I wanted to make sure she, went to lessons because I think it's easier for her to give up if I'm I'm trying to teach her, it was the same with teaching her to ride a bike and stuff like that. But you know, I think a lot about like how much am I pushing that on my child, right? Like she
Yeah,
seems interested. I think she does seem genuinely interested. Um, but you're always asking yourself that question. You know, does she really like this, or is she just kind of trying to make me happy here?
yeah,
Is that sort of some of what you went through with your youngest daughter, I suppose?
yeah, oh, for sure. Um, and that's why I was okay with her deciding not to, like, it,
Yep.
'cause I get it. When I was her age when she quit, I quit too. I took lessons as a kid, and I liked my teacher, but I hated practicing. And I came to a point where skateboards
Yep.
and hanging with my buddies was way more important than playing the guitar, you know?
Yeah.
But then I had my, I'll tell a quick story here. I was in grade
Okay.
9, and we would skateboard every day in the park nearby. And one day, this new kid comes by doing, a tic tac. Remember, this was the '70s. He's doing this thing on a skateboard. He said, "Whoa, what's that?" And we kind of befriended him, and he came over to my house, and he picked up my guitar because I would always say, "Oh, yeah, I play guitar," but I couldn't play.
Yep.
And he played, the beginning of Stairway to Heaven and a bar chord,
Yeah.
and my jaw hit the floor. I was like, "Oh my god. Whoa." And then, we became buddies. He was a drummer,
Okay.
and we would skateboard and jam every day from grade 9 to university. You know, we drove my parents crazy with Rush songs.
Yeah.
Just
That's a
and
good way to learn.
but it must have sounded horrible with no bass,
Yeah.
just a big drum set and my too loud guitar, and I'm sure I wasn't very good, but boy, it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's where the I think, at least for me, it was the same way. I took lessons when I was a kid too, and
yeah,
I liked my teachers and stuff, and but didn't particularly enjoy lessons and theory and
yeah,
you know taking tests and all that stuff that comes along with it. But once you start playing with other people,
yeah,
I think that's where the magic is, right?
yeah, and somehow I mean, he's not a bad guitar player, but he, I don't know, tricked me or convinced me to sit down with the first Led Zeppelin record
Yeah.
and learn it by ear, and that's so now I've just learned everything by ear, which is probably one of the reasons why I play like I do, and I haven't really gotten better since high school.
Well, I mean, don't we just sort of like, I don't know, at least for me and many of the people I know, we hit like 18 or 20 or whatever it is, and we're kind of that person for the rest of our life to some degree, right? Like the music we love is that same music we were listening to at that period. Like there's
True.
something about it.
Yep.
How did you make the transition from Led Zeppelin to like, I mean, obviously you've got this huge sort of like surf rock, rockabilly kind of style. So where does that come from? Where does that come in?
Well, when I was in elementary school, my 3 favorite bands were Black Sabbath, the Beatles, and the Ventures,
Yep.
which was kinda weird. We would play ball hockey in my friend Roger's basement, and we would listen to the Ventures. And then, then we put on Masters of Reality, and we didn't sort of differentiate between them.
Yep.
And, then in high school, my next door neighbor's big brother, who kinda got me into music and guitar as a little kid, played me, God Save the Queen
Yep.
and We Will Rock You, the 245s on the same day. I was like, "Oh, whoa, what's going on?" And then slowly that stuff sort of infiltrated into our high school lives,
Yeah.
you know, but then the surfy thing, actually, like, I'd played it in a ton of bands, garage rock and some kind of pre-grunge kinda heavy rock, but instrumental was, the fastest way to the stage. I loved the Shadowy Men or Shattered Planet,
Yep.
who we became really close friends with, and, the band Slow, who we mentioned earlier, they were playing a gig here, and, it was pretty messy, and the singer was missing or something, I think, so the band came out and did, a short set of surf songs, and I thought, "Whoa, that's great. I wanna
Yep.
make an instrumental band." So a couple years later, that's what happened. I was hanging out with Graham, and I said, "Hey, let's learn Telstar." So we
Yep.
learned Telstar, and I said, "We should have a band." And at that moment, our friend Richie, a drummer, walked in the door, and we said, "You're our drummer." It was like, "Huh?" And within a couple of weeks, we were playing gigs.
Crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and that was it. It was we didn't have to deal with a singer. We could play, and we were pretty good right away, and, that gave us an advantage.
Yep.
We could get a case of beer and $50, and we were happy.
Yeah. And you've kind of managed to continue that all, since that day, right? Like, it's pretty cool. I want to kind of bring it back to the kind of parenting piece a little bit. Um, do you think, and we talked about the Brentness, but do you think becoming a dad changed you?
Um, I don't know. I mean, well, I don't know. I I don't wanna go down this weird road and say, "Well, I'm a great guy and I love kids," like, 'cause that's just dumb. But yeah, because it does change your perspective on a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think I mean, I've always been pretty caring, and it's kinda cool. When you have a child, and how can I put this into words? Um, just the opportunity to be loving and caring and be a steward, I guess, for baby, a youngster.
Yep.
Um, and so I think that everything you do after that point, you've always got your children in mind, no matter what it is.
Yeah. You can't help it, right? And yeah, it's interesting because I sort of have this like this theory, or maybe I'm just like projecting my own experience, but like I feel like your whole life, at least, yeah, it was this way for me, but my whole life was kind of like, as I was growing up, everything was about me, right?
Yeah,
Like it's all about like, oh, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? And what, like, and I think this is maybe a bit of like a Western sort of thing, but like family, it doesn't hold the same importance, or at least it didn't for me in my upbringing.
yeah, oh
And I
yeah,
feel like for me, that was a thing that was big about having kids, was like all of a sudden you kind of realize the importance of like family and real love and real caring. And I think it kind of made my friendship stronger too, because you realize like how important it is to have good
yeah,
friends and good people who care about you and really care, right?
yeah,
And so I think in that way, things do change a little bit. But I see you struggling with it, as you're answering that question. You're like, did it change me though? And maybe it just like you mentioned you're a caring person, always were a caring person, so it maybe just kind of like highlights that, or it gives you an opportunity to really demonstrate that,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But
And
I mean, it's been said. I think everybody says that it fundamentally changes you once you have a kid.
yeah.
Um, but it's kind of hard to quantify what those changes are because as you grow and as you mature, you're kind of in some way. We just said you don't change since you're 18, but there are even just microscopic or infinitesimal little bits as you
Yeah.
evolve as a person. You know.
Yeah, and your kids challenge you, right, to grow and change too.
Yeah.
And like maybe to bring it back to those, we were talking about those moments when you feel like you're really fucked up as a parent, right? Like your kids challenge you um to really reflect on those things and think about like, why did I do that, or why did I make that decision, or how did that happen?
Yeah. Or how can I keep my kids from following in those footsteps or making that same mistake? Or there's also you got to let them do what they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're probably, I've got younger kids, but so I'm kind of just starting to think about these things, but you talked about kind of letting them, um, explore what's important to them. Like some
Yeah.
of that too is like, let them maybe make their own mistakes too, if that's going to be the outcome.
Yeah. I mean, you need to let them evolve. We've, there's all the cliches of helicopter parents, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of musical helicopter parents. I'm a school teacher, and for a dozen years, I taught at a charter school that was kind of arts based,
Okay.
and you would see that some of the parents, like, there's dealing with dancing daughters, you see a lot of the dance mom,
Oh yeah.
which is a cliche, but it's very true. Um, and I haven't seen wasn't there a show about, pageant kids, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of controlling parents who want to be in charge, and I don't know if they're living their life through their kids, but it's hard to see,
Yep.
sometimes painful, how the parents are just right in there all the time.
Yeah.
We used to have some parents who would follow their kids into the school, and buy at the door, and I don't know, but
Yep. Well,
yeah,
I think you talk about like the dancing world. I think I was just talking with my what would this be? My cousin-in-law, my wife's cousin's husband, just yesterday, and he was talking about hockey, and he's got like a 7-year old boys who are in hockey and already kind of starting to see some of that same stuff,
for
right?
sure. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely another area where there's it when I actually went to one of KJ's kids' games in the winter, and it was fun, but you do see some of those parents that control every minute, and, when they're at the boards hollering at the kids, and,
Yeah.
when I was a kid, it was probably way more dangerous, but, the parents would just send us out on the rinks, we play the games,
Yep.
and it wasn't so controlling and competitive.
Yeah. It's funny. We talk about how like our well, maybe we will explore this a little bit more, but I'm just thinking about how like my daughter, my oldest daughter, is a lot like me. And I remember when I was a kid, like the reason I wanted to quit baseball was
Mhm.
because I just remember like looking out to the stands and the parents were screaming at the umpire, and like it just drove me nuts. Like
Yeah,
this is not fun, right? And my daughter, she didn't want to play soccer this year, and I think that was a big part of it. She felt like already it's too competitive. Like this isn't
pressure,
fun.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I was at a neighbor's kids soccer game the other day, and there were parents just like screaming at these 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds on the field. Like it's like, oh my God, who cares?
yeah, yep,
But it's hard. Like I will say, like, maybe I'm judging a little bit, but I do think it's hard not to get really kind of get wrapped up in all that,
yeah.
especially when you see other parents doing it and kind of maybe what they're doing you kind of perceive as negatively impacting your kid, right? And so then you want to get involved and all that stuff. It's
Good
just
point. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. But anyway, it's these are kind of some of the things that we navigate as parents, right? As we kind of move through. But let's maybe talk. Maybe we can shift gears a little bit and talk about kind of what are those rewarding aspects of being a dad. Like, what are as you look at your kids and you've got very accomplished
yeah.
children today. Like, as you reflect back, like, what are those rewarding things about being a parent?
Well, I mean, you always wanna see your kids be successful, and you want to see them be happy, and when that happens, I mean, that's kind of the ultimate reward right there, and even at different stages in their life, I'm sure when you see your daughter accomplish something or reach a milestone, it's pretty great, you know, what was the question again?
Well, it was, like what are the rewarding parts about being a parent? And I
Yeah,
mean, you're talking about the milestones and seeing them succeed, but you
yeah,
also mentioned just seeing them be happy too.
yeah, I mean, that's kinda your ultimate goal, I think,
Yeah.
as a you want your kids to be happy. You don't want them to struggle. I mean, there's certain life struggles everyone needs to get through and to do, but yeah, you want them to be happy. But also, there's lots of fun stuff when you're a parent. Just doing the day-to-day fun stuff or little discoveries, playing games, running through the park, going for a swim, um, riding a bike, just
Yep.
doing stuff together. Bonding, relationships. Um, And I think all parents and kids will probably tell you there's times in their life when there's more distance in the relationship, and there's times when they're closer. And it's not always the close times aren't always when they need you. I think it's kind of nice actually to be close when they're like now as adults, when they're kind of independent and they're not, you know, they're coming to you because they love you, not because they want $20 or a ride to a friend's house.
Yeah. And they
So
know they can depend on you, right?
yeah, I just made my kids sound selfish, but that's that was sort of, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I mean, so this is what happens. Your relationship with your parents evolves, right? It starts very much as like they require you to survive,
yeah,
right? And then it moves on to, well, okay, you're kind of teaching them how to navigate the world a little bit. You're trying to impart some skills for the world. And then they go through the teenage phase, which isn't always the case, but for many people, I know it's the same for myself. We talked about kind of being selfish. Like I
yeah,
kind of in those years, I wasn't thinking about like my parents really at all. It's that I
no,
loved them. I got along with them, but it was kind of like you said, can I borrow your car? My
yeah,
friends are doing this. Like, don't tell me I need to be home at a certain time because I'm doing
yeah,
my own thing. Um, but then as you get older, and certainly I've seen this with my own dad, like your relationship changes, right? And
yeah,
you almost reach a kind of friend, maybe the friendship grows. Not that you're just friends, but that friendship aspect can
yeah. Well,
come out.
see, about 10 years ago, when my mom expired, which it'll be 10 years this summer, um, I was going through a divorce and I was living here in this house. My mom was sick. And so it was actually good that I was here. The extra body, the help and support. And then when
Yep.
mom died, dad and I lived together for almost a year. And I described it as like Oscar and Felix from The Odd Couple. But it wasn't bad. And I think it really helped our relationship. But then we had to break up and I moved out, you
Well,
know?
you go through adversity like that, and it
Yeah.
in a way, sometimes a silver lining of these terrible things that happen in our lives is they do sometimes bring people closer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
Um,
looking now I'm back doing the same thing, living here and taking care of dad with help from the siblings, but yeah,
yeah. Well, that's we were talking about you realize the importance of being able to depend on people and depend on your family and your real friends and things like that. And so in your tough times, to know that you've got that support around is really important. I'm sure your dad's really grateful for you being around.
I'm sure he is. And, it's funny, KJ and I trade dad stories about one of my dad's favorite sayings is, "Well, I would have done it differently." Yeah, and his dad would say the same thing. So we compare dads a lot, but, it's interesting to be to have adult kids and a very senior dad and be in the middle. So I'm a kid and a dad.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as you kind of reflect back on I guess on your life, like how does your dad fit into that in terms of creating the Brentness,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Like what role did he play?
Well, he was always supportive of me making music. Um, Bought me my first guitars and my first loud amplifier. Um, Always encouraged us to play here, to make music here. Both parents, mom and dad, did that. Um, he's an intellectual. He's a professor, and he taught at the university for pretty much all of his life. So he was pretty good about hiding the fact that he probably was disappointed that I'm not a scholar. I'm an elementary school teacher and a rock and roll guy, but it actually, I take that back. I think he's probably happy that I'm happy,
Yeah.
like we talked about. He's probably thinking that, Brent, he's teaching, he's making music. He now has been encouraging me to make more music, and I almost think, damn, I should just retire. And but then you can't make money playing music. But maybe I could move to Spain and
Yep.
where they don't know that Huevos Rancheros is a breakfast. But
Yeah, you don't show up on the Google search these days the way you you would have, well, when you named the band, you wouldn't have thought about that.
Yeah. Well, it was quite funny, when we went to Spain for the first time, someone they didn't realize it was a breakfast, and one of the guys said, "Huevos Rancheros? You have the testicles of a rancher?" So we thought we were just talking about our balls and being farmers,
Yeah.
which is funny.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I mean, that's a real thing here in Alberta, right?
Yeah,
Like it's kind of, prairie oysters, kind of in that realm. Um,
exactly.
so you talked about, your dad being encouraging of you playing music and
Yeah,
playing music in his house. So you and I were talking about it before we kind of officially got started, but you're sitting in your dad's library right now,
yeah,
where I understand your latest EP for Ramblin Ambassadors was recorded.
yeah. Well, it's neat. There's an 18-foot ceiling. It's got a great blend of books and hardwood and glass, um, furniture. So it sounds really great in here. Um, in fact, a few weeks ago, my younger sister is a choreographer and the artistic director of a dance company, and her partner Noel brought the band in and recorded them here as well. So there was upright bass and drums
Wow.
and, and a trumpet, and it sounded amazing in here. It's pretty good. So this was a great place to jam as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There it's important to have an environment that is I think the environment kind of creates or maybe contributes to the creativity is what I mean to say.
yeah,
Um, the physical space plays a role in what you can make, I think.
yeah. And
Um,
I spent most of my life in here with headphones and records and playing guitar right where I'm sitting right now.
yeah.
Hmm.
That's so cool. And to jump forward to today when you've just created a record in that room
Yeah,
that you've released. So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me what's kind of the latest with Ramblin' Ambassadors and
yeah.
anything that's going on.
Well, it's been interesting. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, our bass player Scott moved to Europe with his family, following his wife's career, and my buddy Garrett Thorson, who plays bass. Actually, he can play any instrument. There's been a few shows where Tyler hasn't been able to make it, so Garrett plays drums.
Wow.
And but we just kind of been carrying on, and I really wanted to make more records. And now that I'm OLD, I'd like to I'd like to tour and go somewhere. And because the friendship I have with these guys, I think that being able to travel with them would be nice. There wouldn't be some of the stuff that the We Huevos guys got up to.
Yeah.
And the record, I just wanted to record some songs. So we asked Dad, and he actually bought us beer, and we set up in here and recorded. And it took us a long time to finish, which was too bad. Then we had these recordings. I thought, what are we going to do with them? And Mint Records, who had done the three Ambassa albums and the Huevo stuff, they fired me several years ago. Like
Okay.
I had an idea for a record and I went, "Hey, Randy," and it was he like, "Oh, well, we decided, we're not going to do anything with you anymore." I was like, "Oh, but I'll come back to that." So we had this recording, and I reached out to a couple of labels, and Ghost Highway in Madrid. They really like kind of raunchy rock and roll,
Yeah.
but they were doing a series of instrumental records from around the world. And I saw that, so I just said, "Hey, would you be interested?" And he said, "Yeah, sure. Send me the recordings." And Marcos, it seems to be a really nice guy. I'd like to meet him face to face. Um, and bingo, it's kind of neat. It's got great artwork.
Yep.
Um, there's a few more songs in the can that I would like to find someone else to put out.
Cool.
And yeah, and then the Mint Records thing. When I got the records in my hand, I was thinking, well, how do I how do I get these to people who don't listen to records? And I reached out to Mint, and just on the off chance, I asked for help. I said, "How can I get these on streaming services?" Um, because I don't know anything about that. And then Randy, "Oh, well, we can do it for you." So Mint unofficially I guess, added a Mint catalog number to it and put it on the streaming services.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I need to make an announcement of that on the social media, but I'm terrible at that. But I will.
Well, you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, and
You
no,
go
and I think that's great that Mint would. I felt they kind of went out of their way for me, which is nice.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool. Well, you we're talking about family here, and kind of seems like, you're part of that Mint family, right? And
yeah,
so with regular families, things ebb and flow, but your family's kind of always there for you.
yeah, yeah. Well, the Mint Records was founded by Bill Baker and Randy Iwata, and I talk to Bill Baker almost every day. It's like he's another. He actually kind of is family. It's crazy. I'm blessed to have a ton of close friends. Really lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So you talked about so we've got the new EP, and we'll obviously put up links and stuff to all of that. You've got it available digitally, but you've also got some physical copies
Yeah.
available as well. So where
I
can
have
people find those?
I have some left. I'm from me, so they can DM drop slide into my DMs. Is that a thing? Either through the Facebook, which I don't really have access to, but I can find it, or the Instagram. Um, and I've been mailing them out like crazy lately, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
I do have a few red ones left. You've got one. I can see
I've
on the
got one. Yeah, it's in the background. Yep. That's
yep.
the red or the orange, I think, maybe.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Let's have a
It's
look.
funny. I didn't know which ones were the colored ones. I was trying to figure it out, and then I realized the ones with the red ambassadors printing were the ones with the colored vinyl.
Oh, I see. That makes sense.
I didn't know. I'm not very smart.
So that's where people can find the new record. You mentioned touring. So are you kind of in, sounds like maybe early stages of thinking about some touring?
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think it's going to happen in Canada.
Okay.
I had actually been talking to a Spanish promoter to get us over there, but yeah, I think he got too busy and forgot about us. So I need to get on that. I mean, last summer I went to Italy with Chixdiggit,
Yeah.
and we played punk rock Raduno.
Yep.
And because my drummer is their drummer, KJ learned a dozen songs, and
Right.
we got grandfathered into the festival and played a couple of really fun shows.
Yeah. I
And
heard
that
it
really
was
makes me
heard it
want
was
to go.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if maybe people aren't aware, we did have Tyler on the show
Yeah.
at end of last year, I think, as well, talking about the ambassadors and talking about Chixdiggit.
Yeah.
Again, there's another whole family, right,
Yeah.
of supportive folks. And it's funny, I was talking to KJ about playing those shows, and he was so excited
Yeah.
about learning the bass parts and playing with you guys. So yeah, it's kind of neat to I love that, like, people sort of like um coming in and out of the bands and filling in. And actually one of the first times, maybe not one of the first times, but I've seen you play with Chixdiggit a fair number of times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm part of the Chixdiggit family, I
Right.
guess. You know, when we were in Italy, KJ said, "Tell him you made our first record," because I was the producer and
Yep.
had to deal with Sub Pop and buying tape, and I got paid to help someone make a record, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, and I think KJ might have also told me this story. So I was in at the Punk Rock Museum when KJ and Grant Lawrence were doing
Oh
tours
yeah.
there
Mhm.
last June. I was very fortunate to get to participate in all that. And one of the pieces that's on display at that museum, and I don't know if you've been yet.
I have.
Um, yeah, you should check it out. But is KJ's guitar,
Yeah.
that Rickenbacker guitar. And am I remembering correctly that that was maybe your guitar
I think I
before that?
sold it to him. I sold him. I used to manage a vintage guitar store,
Okay.
and that was how I met KJ. He would come in. I think I talked him out of PV amplifiers and whatever, but he all wanted Rickenbacker. He bought a couple of Rickenbackers,
Yeah.
and that one he took it everywhere. It's
Yeah.
amazing it's still together. You know,
Yeah. I think just barely.
yeah, just barely. There's a lot of duct tape holding that thing together, but yeah, it was smart that he retired it, and it's amazing that it's in that museum.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
really cool to see it there.
yeah.
So there's that. I mean, there's a little piece of your history in that museum too.
Well, I'm still waiting for Fat Mike to ask for one of my guitars, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
It could. You never know. Maybe you'll get to go down there and give some tours. It's yeah, it's a pretty neat place.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so possibly some upcoming touring in Europe. Um, and if you want to see the Ramblin Ambassadors in Canada, if it's not a tour, you're just gonna have to come to Calgary or maybe Edmonton.
Yeah, maybe Edmonton or maybe Medicine Hat or,
Yeah, Medicine Hat this Friday.
we're playing Vantopia. I don't know if you know
Okay.
anything about it. I've never
No.
been. Um, it's kind of from what I know of it, like, there's the Vandits instead of a bike gang, they're a van gang.
Okay.
They put on a a weekend of outdoor shows or outdoor show. I don't know. It's one place with lots of bands, and it's pretty much very heavy music. And they invited us to play. So I don't know if we're going to get pelted with beer bottles or people will like the fact that we're not tuned down to C.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. Everyone there is going to be my friend.
Yeah.
Um, so it'll be fun.
And so where's Vantopia?
Some small town whose name I forget.
Okay. We'll
Nearby.
look it up. Yeah,
Nearby. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we'll look it up. Okay. Well, any words of wisdom for dads out there listening, maybe new dads or soon to be dads?
Um, well, oh, here's a piece of advice. A friend of mine, when his kids were babies, he would put them to bed and put on AC/DC and start vacuuming. Those kids slept through the night and still do. Um, that was his big parenting advice. Make a lot of noise. And the kids like AC/DC as well. But
Yeah, well, there you go. AC/DC at bedtime. That's not a bad idea.
yeah, well, just and he would just let them sleep.
Yeah. Well, sleeping, that's a whole other topic. We'll have to save that for part two of the interview. But yeah, sleeping is a whole battle in and of itself. But that's great advice. And I think, it's funny, you saying that. I used to always joke my mom was like a major clean freak.
Mhm.
And on like Saturday mornings, when I'd want to sleep in, she would
Yeah.
have the vacuum out at like 7 a.m. vacuuming the house. And I'm a
Mhm.
great sleeper now. Yeah.
Maybe, like, my mom did that too. It's like, "Oh, Brent's been out till 2 in the morning. What a slouch. I'm gonna wake him up."
Yep.
Passive aggressive mom behavior,
Yep.
but now you can sleep through it.
Exactly. Yeah, it served me well. So that's great advice. AC/DC, take out the vacuum.
Yes.
Brent, it's been awesome talking to you. Thanks for coming on the show and congratulations on the new EP. I love it.
Thank you.
I'll put up links so people can find it.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, looking forward to seeing the Ramblin Ambassadors soon.
Yep, me too. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person.
Yeah.